Chapter 9. The Watsons Go to Birmingham, 1963. That Sunday I got up early. There wasn't any cartoons on, but that was always fun to wake up and not have to worry about going to school. When I got into the living room, I was surprised to see the front door open. I looked outside and I saw Dad sitting on the brown bomber. I guess he was listening to records because he had his arm across the seat and was beating his hands up and down like it was a drum. I ran back upstairs to the bedroom and changed out of my pajamas. I peeked out of the bedroom window to make sure Dad hadn't left. He was still in the car, so I ran downstairs through the front door and remembered and caught the screen just before it slammed. I tapped the window, and Dad turned and smiled at me and he pointed to the passenger side for me to get in. I ran around the car and climbed in. "Hey, Kenny." "Hi, Dad." "How'd you sleep?" Okay, I guess." "Go on and get your yakety yak. Come sit with me for a while." "That's okay. I'll just listen to what you're playing." So we listened for a couple of jive songs, and then I said, "Dad, does Byron really have to go to Alabama? Could we just drive about to, let's say, Ohio and pretend that we're going to leave him and scare him?" Dad looked at me and smiled, kind of slow. He reached over and turned the Ultra Glide down a little bit. "Kenneth, I know you're going to miss Byron. We all will. But, son, there are some things that Byron has to learn, and he's not learning them in Flint. And the things he is learning are things we don't want him to. Do you understand?" "No." Dad turned the Ultra Glide down a little more. He looked at me like he was thinking whether or not he should tell me something. He was looking straight at me, and even though it was real hard, I looked right back. I tried to look real intelligent, and I guess it worked, because finally Dad said, "Kenny, we've put a lot of thought into this. I know you've seen on the news what's happening in some parts of the South, right?" We'd seen pictures of a bunch of really mad white people with twisted up faces screaming and giving dirty finger signs to some little Negro kids who were trying just to go to school. I'd seen the pictures, but I really didn't know what these white people could hate some kids that much. "Well, I've seen it." I didn't have to tell Dad. I didn't understand. "Well, a lot of times that's going to be the way it is for you kids. Byron is getting old enough to have to understand that his time for playing is running out fast. He's got to realize that the world doesn't have a lot of jokes waiting for him. He's got to be ready." Dad looked at me again to make sure I was understanding, and I nodded. "Grandma Sands says it's quiet down there, and they are, but we think it's time Byron got an idea of the kind of place the world can be. And maybe spending some time down south will help open his eyes." I nodded my head again. Mama and I are very worried because there's so many things that can go wrong to a young person, and Byron seems bound and determined to find every one of them. "Now, do you really understand why we're sending Byron to Birmingham?" "I think so, Dad." "Good, because Kenny, we've done all we can, and it seems temptations are too much for By here in Flint. So hopefully the slower pace of Alabama will help him by removing some of those temptations. Hopefully he can see that there comes a time to let all of the silliness go. By'll be back, maybe at the end of the summer, maybe next year. It's completely in his own hands now." I love the way Dad talked to me like I was a grown-up. I didn't understand half the junk he was saying, but it sure felt good to be talked to like that. It's times like these when someone is talking to you like you are grown up and that you have to be careful not to pick your nose or dig your drawers out of your butt. "Okay, Dad, thanks." He smiled again, turned the altar card back up, and ran his hand over my head. Some of the time when you think about being grown up, it gets kind of scary. I couldn't figure out why Mama and Dad knew how to take care of things, but I couldn't figure out how they knew what to do with Byron. "Dad?" "Mm-hmm." don't think I'll ever know what to do when I'm grown up. It seems like you and Mama know a lot of things that I can never learn. It seems real scary. I don't think I could ever be good parents like you guys. Dad turned the altar glide back down. Kenny, do you remember when we used to go to the drives and I'd put you in my lap and let you steer the car? I smiled. Yeah. Does that mean I get to do that on the way to Alabama? Sure, but that's not what I meant. Do you remember how big and scary the car seemed to be first time you were behind the wheel? Dad was right, even though I knew he was watching everything real close. It was real scary to steer the brown bomber. Well, that was being a big grown up, is like. At first, it's scary, but then, before you realize it, with a lot of practice, you have it under control. Hopefully, you'll have lots of time to practice being grown up before you actually have to do it. This was making sense to me. And as far as you being a good parent, don't worry. You'll learn from the mistakes like your mother and I make, just like we learned from the mistakes our parents made. I don't have a single doubt that you and Byron and Joey will be much better parents than your mother and I ever were. Dad stopped talking for a second. Besides, some of the time we don't think we're doing or we've done such a good job. But you're right, Kenneth. It can be scary. It gets a lot scarier when you see you're responsible for 3 little lives. A lot scarier. I wanted to see if Dad was going to talk to me like this anymore. He turned the music back up. We listened to his junk a little more, and then I said, Dad? Yeah? I've got one more question. He turned the altar glide down and gave me a serious look. What do you want to know, Kenny? Is it too late to go get my yakety yak? Dad laughed and sent me to go get it. I had to promise to play it only 3 times, though. And after the 3rd time, I said, Dad, why did you buy this record player? Don't they have radio stations in Alabama? Sure they do. Lots of them. But you see, once you get south of Cincinnati, the only kind of radio station you can get is hillbilly music. And you won't believe this, but if you listen to any kind of music long enough, first you get accustomed to it and then you learn to like it. Now, your mother and I made a deal when we first got married that if either one of us ever watched Wonderful, Wonderful Lawrence Welk Show or listened to country music, the other one had get to got to get a free divorce. I'm kind of used to your mother, and I don't want to have her dump me. So instead of taking the chance I would get hooked on hillbilly music, I thought it would be wise to bring our own sounds along with us. Even though it made sense to me, Mama didn't buy it. And for the next week, while they were getting everything ready and set to go to Alabama, she kept reminding Dad of how much the Ultraglider cost and how it messed up the whole plans she'd written in her notebook. Me and Joey were in the living room playing when Mama and our neighbor, Mrs. Davidson, came in. Hello, Joetta. Hello, Kenneth. Hi, Mrs. Davidson. I noticed right away she had something behind her back. She said, Since I won't be seeing you for a while, I thought I'd give you something so you wouldn't forget me, sweetheart. She stuck a box out towards Joey. I could kill Joey the way she opened presents. Instead of ripping the wrap paper off, she hunted around to find each piece of tape, then peeled it off real careful. It took her about 2 days to get all the paper off that open box. Joey finally held it up her present. I didn't think Mrs. Davison noticed, but I could tell there was something that Joey wasn't too happy about. She looked at Mama real quick, and Mama looked at her, and Joey said, Thank you very much, Mrs. Davidson. Mama smiled. Mrs. Davison took the present from Joey and handed it to Mama. See, Willona, it's just like I told you. Look at that smile. The minute I saw it reminded me of Joetta. Is that her smile or what? In fact, do you know what I named this angel? Joey pretended she was stupid and said, No, Mrs. Davison. I named her after my favorite little girl. This angel's name is Joetta. I went over to take a closer look. Mrs. Davison had bought Joey a little angel that was kind of chubby and had big wings and a halo made out of straw. The only thing about its smile that looked like Joey to me was that the angel had a great big dimple, too. It was made out of white clay and it looked like someone had forgotten to paint it. The only thing that had any color on it were the cheeks and the eyes, and the cheeks were red and the eyes were blue. Mrs. Davison, ooh, child, give me one more big hug before I go. Joey got up and hugged Mrs. Davison, then took her angel and said, I'm going to put her in my room. Thank you, Mrs. Davison. You're welcome, precious, said Mrs. Davison. Looked like she was going to cry. We all knew she'd kidnap Joey if she had the chance. She liked her that much. When Mrs. Davison left, Mama went upstairs into Joey's room. I was eavesdropped. They both were sitting on Joey's bed. I was very proud of you, the way you behaved, Joetta. What was wrong? The angel, Mommy. Oh? Mrs. Davison said I reminded her of me, but it didn't look like me at all. Mama looked around the room. Where'd you put it? It's in my sock drawer. Joey was so neat, she had separated drawer for socks. Mama went and got the angel and sat next to Joey. Sweetheart, I can see how it reminds her of you. Look at that dimple. But, Mommy, it's white. Mama laughed. Well, honey, I can't say it isn't. But angel's an angel. What do you think? Maybe, but I know the angel's name isn't Joetta Watson. Well, I'm glad you didn't hurt Mrs. Davidson's feelings. Keep the angel around. You might get to see it. Or you might get to like it. Where do you want me to put it? Back under the socks, Mama laughed. The only one who didn't do anything to get ready to Alabama was Byron. He acted like nothing was going to happen. He and Mama got a bunch of our clothes together and put them in suitcases. The smelly green pine tree that hung from the rearview mirror and all the list of figuring was done, but Byron acted like he didn't notice. Even after a few more yelling phone calls were made to Alabama, Daddy Cool just kept up being cool. Byron didn't even get nervous when Mama packed a whole bunch of food in the giant green cooler we borrowed from the Johnsons. After all the stuff, it was finally the night before we were supposed to leave. We just got in bed and Byron was up in his bunk and I was down on mine. I was so excited that I was talking a mile a minute, but I was talking to myself. Byron wouldn't answer or anything. There was a knock on our door. Come in. It was Mama and Dad. Mama said, Lights out, Kenneth and Byron. Byron, you come with us. What for? We thought since this was your last night, you were spending in Flint for a while, that you might like to sleep in our room tonight. You thought what? Byron had a way of saying stuff in a few words that made it seem like he was saying a whole bunch more. Come on. By your bunking with us tonight, Dad said. Oh, man. Byron jumped off the top bunk and gave me the death stare. I just shrugged. I guess the grapevine had gotten back to Mama and Dad that By was going to make a prison break tonight before he got transferred to Alabama. He thought I was the snitch, but it was Joey. She knew if Mama and Dad got up in the morning and Byron flew the coop that he'd really be dead, a dead man, and they finally recaptured him. So I guess she saved his life by snitching, but By sure did not appreciate it. I sneaked out of bed after Mama and Dad arrested Byron. I was too excited to sleep and too excited to read. I looked out the window at the brown bomber and couldn't believe it was going to take us all the way to Alabama. The trip didn't become real until 9 in the morning when we were in the car waving goodbye to the Rufus and heading towards I-75, a road that runs all the way from Flint to Florida. One road. We weren't even on the expressway before Mama started reading out of the notebook, telling us everything she had planned for the next 3 days. Day 1, today, we leave Flint and drive for 300 miles in about 5.5 hours. That will take us to Cincinnati. 300 miles in one day. It just doesn't seem like that could be done. Me and Joey shook our heads, and Byron looked out the window. In Cincinnati, we'll get a room in a motel. We bought plenty of blankets so you kids will be able to sleep on the floor. Me and Joey cheered. We'd never been in a motel before. Byron just kept looking out the window. Day 2, tomorrow. Your daddy and his car both aren't as young as they used to be, so we didn't want to push either one of them too hard. Dad looked shocked. So we rise and shine real early in the morning and drive for 255 miles, or about 6 hours, and we should be right outside Knoxville, Tennessee. Mr. Johnson said there were some clean, safe restaurants there so we could spend the night in the car. If that's true, we'll stay there. If not, we'll have to see if we can find a motel room in Knoxville. Day 3, Monday, is when we're going to be a tough one for your daddy because he's going to have to drive for more than 6 hours. And after we leave Knoxville, we've got about 300 miles to go. If we leave early enough, we'll be pulling into home about 3 in the afternoon. Mama turned the page in her notebook. We're going to be able to stop once a day on the way down for hamburgers and once a day on the way back. Me and Joey cheered again at this news, but Byron acted like he didn't hear. Now, if we sleep in the car outside Knoxville, we can stop one more bonus time coming and going. Otherwise, the cooler trunk is full of chicken, soda, pop, potato salad, sandwiches, and fruit, and for the whole trip down. I'm sure Grandma Sands will have everything set for us on the way back. I thought about it for a minute and then asked Mama, how come we don't just drive until Daddy gets tired and then stop? Dad did the imitation of hillbilly accent. 'Cause boy, and he in the deep south, you all gonna be driven though. Y'all colored folks can't be just pulling up in any way, expecting us to get room and food and yeah boy. I said yeah boy, and I'm saying boy. Me and Joey laughed again. Even Byron kinda smiled. But this only encouraged Dad to say some more Southern style stuff. Y'all don't know that boy. What's the matter with you? You thinking you thinking this is America? Mama had everything planned about the trip. Everything. Where we eat, where we sleep, when we eat, when we sleep, when we eat, who got bologna sandwiches on day 1 and who got tuna fish on day 2 and who got peanut butter and jelly on day 3. She figured out how long we could hold ourselves between going to the bathroom, how much money we'd spend on the hamburgers, how much was for any emergencies, everything. She figured out who'd get the window on each day and who was responsible for keeping the paper and the junk piling up in the car. When she finished reading all that stuff to us, I asked her if I could look at her notebook, and she handed it to me. And when I saw written on the cover in big black letters was, "The Watsons Go to Birmingham, 1963. She even had drawn a picture of a flower with a big, fat, stupid bird trying to land on it. Man, Mama sure is a bad artist. Why is this bird trying to land on a flower, Mama? Dad cracked up. Ooh, Kenneth! I asked her the same thing, and she was highly offended. Mama said, "That's not a bee. It's a bee, not a bird. I guess if you squinted up your eyes, it might look like a bee, but not so much." Mama had gone to the library and looked up stuff about every state we travel through. She heard a bunch of boring junk about the expressway. How many years it took to finish it? How many miles long was it? How much it cost to build it? How it ran all the way from Upper Peninsula, Michigan to Florida. All kinds of thrilling news. The only thing that was a little bit interesting was how many people got killed and hurt making the road. We would never think of putting an expressway down was so dangerous. She bought books and puzzles and games too. She really did try to make the trip interesting. The most interesting part for me was going to be Byron. 2 days before we left, Buphead came to visit Byron, and the three of us were in my and Bai's bedroom. They tried to bully me out of the room, but I stayed. They were sitting up at the upper bunk and I was in the lower one. Man, Bubhead complained, I couldn't live with your old man. We'd be coming up to blows daily, Jack. What can I say? Byron answered. Not much. I can't believe they're going to make you spend the whole blank summer in hot old Alabama. Shoot! I'd find out somewhere else to stay. You're going to be black as the ace of spades when you get back. They got some sure enough sun down there. Yeah, but Dig, I got a way to pay them jive old squares back. Yeah? What are you going to do? I ain't even sure what I'm gonna do yet. I know how they is. They gonna try some Ozzie and Harriet TV show mess on the way down. You know, playing games, counting cows, guessing how many red cars they're gonna see the next 2 miles, and all that kind for six. They're 6'9", and I'm ready for them. Yeah, yeah, I got something that'll mess their junk up for all of them. What's that, Daddy-O? Byron remembered I was still in the lower bunk. He stuck his head over the edge and pointed at me. You say one word about this to anyone, and I'm going to jack your little lightweight behind up. You hear me? I said, oh, man. Bi disappeared back on the top bunk. Yeah, Bubhead. If I do go, I'm going to go the whole blank trip, and no matter what they do to me, I ain't going to say one single word. Whoa. How long a trip is it going to take? 3 days. Cool. That'll show 'em. They slapped palms and Bi said, yeah, you know it will. But as soon as we got to Detroit, Byron said, how are we going to work this record player? Dad looked in the rearview mirror and said to Bi, what do you mean? Are we going to take turns? Well, Byron, I don't think they'll be playing it for quite a bit yet. You can carry CKLW all the way down to Ohio, and they play some pretty good music. But when they do play it, we're going to take turns. Sure. Cool. I'm first. Am I first? Sure. I guess we'll go by seniority. Dad was in the United Auto Workers, so seniority was really important to him. Cool. I couldn't help myself. I leaned over and Joey said, kind of quiet, to Bi, I guess you really showed them, didn't you? Boy, they really are begging you to talk, weren't they, Daddy-O? Byron made sure Joey wasn't watching. Then he flipped me the dirty finger sign and made his eyes go cross-eyed. On the left, kids, there's Tiger Stadium. Mama was pointing out all the important things as we passed on the way. As a payback for giving me the dirty finger, I said out loud to Bi, how many cows you counted, Bi? How many red cars so far? He gave me his famous death stare, and when I leaned over, Joey whispered, no cars, no cows, but I counted your mama 6 times. Counted your mama 6 times already. I couldn't believe it. What kind of person talks about their mama that way? I said. That's your mama too, stupid. I knew he didn't care, though, but I had to get him back, so I called him the only thing that bothered him. I said, you might have counted my mama 6 times, but have you counted your mouth lately, lipless wonder? I got him. He showed his teeth and said, you little. And he tried to grab me. Dad's eyes in the rearview mirror. All right, you two. I said no nonsense, and don't mean maybe. Byron used a silent mouth language, saying, I'm gonna jack you up in Alabama, you punk. So we drove down I-75 to Birmingham, and I felt pretty good, even though every time I looked at Bi, his eyes were crossed. I didn't care, because this one time I bugged him more than he bugged me.